We live in an age not merely of speed but of spiritual erosion, where silence feels awkward, where solitude is mistaken for deficiency, and where the ability to remain present with oneself has become a rare and radical act. The modern world rewards the hurried, the hyperstimulated, and the perpetually distracted. But this is not just a cultural shift. Nearly a century ago, Carl Jung anticipated this quiet crisis. His warning, framed not in the language of algorithms but of archetypes and the unconscious, rings with renewed urgency today. Hurry is not of the devil. Hurry is the devil. This was not a quip but a diagnosis. Jung understood attention as the primary interface between consciousness and the unconscious, the foundational nutrient of the psyche. To lose control of it is not just to lose focus, it is to forfeit our very capacity for becoming. Today, the science of neuroplasticity confirms what Jung intuited long before MRIs or dopamine feedback loops were part of the cultural vocabulary. Where attention flows, neural pathways grow. The brain molds itself around our habits of focus. But Jung saw further. He recognized that attention does not merely shape cognition, it organizes the very architecture of the psyche. In his clinical work, he observed how the flow of attention either fosters psychological integration or entrenches fragmentation. This insight now sits at the center of an unfolding crisis in the digital age. Attention is no longer just a mental function, it has become a commodity. Worse still, it has been weaponized. Most of us think of attention as a simple faculty, the ability to focus on this rather than that. But Jung regarded it as something more consequential, the primary channel through which the conscious and unconscious minds relate. What we habitually attend to does not just occupy our time, it builds the very structure of who we are. Jung's writings reveal a profound understanding of attention's double-edged nature. It is both a mirror and a mold. It reflects the unconscious contents that dominate our inner world while simultaneously reinforcing them through repetition. In this feedback loop lies the potential for either psychological integration or disintegration. In his therapeutic work, Jung observed a troubling trend among modern individuals, the progressive externalization of attention. Rather than turning inward to confront the unconscious, people increasingly oriented themselves toward the collective, toward social norms, media, and distractions. This led to what he called psychological inflation and over-identification with the collective psyche at the expense of individual development. People became well-versed in what was trending but alienated from their own inner landscapes. Modern neuroscience supports Jung's claim. Attention is the driver of neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to reorganize itself. This means that consistent exposure to fragmented, emotionally charged external stimuli, like those found on social media, can literally rewire the brain in ways that hinder introspection, symbolic thinking, and emotional regulation. Jung recognized this outcome long before its technological causes existed. He foresaw a culture in which attention, captured and manipulated by external forces, would lead to dissociation, psychological projection, and susceptibility to mass movements. Jung understood the psyche not as a mechanical system but as a dynamic ecosystem. Within this ecology, attention functions as the primary nutrient. What receives attention flourishes, what is ignored withers. This principle explains why certain ideas, emotions, and patterns become dominant while others sink into the unconscious. Until you make the unconscious conscious, Jung warned, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The key to transformation then is sustained inward attention, yet modern life militates against precisely this. Jung feared that the chronic redirection of attention away from the self would create a culture of unresolved psychological conflicts. These conflicts, rather than being worked through and integrated, would remain suspended in the unconscious, generating anxiety, compulsions, and depression. He observed that the most enduring sense of psychological peace comes not from avoiding conflict but from confronting and resolving it. But what happens when such resolution is perpetually deferred by 1,000 daily distractions? The consequences are evident in today's mental health landscape. Anxiety and depression rates are surging, not just because of external pressures but because of an inward collapse. People are less able to sustain the kind of attention required to engage with their inner world. The result is what Jung called the provisional life, a mode of existence that lacks depth, coherence, or authentic engagement. Jung's analytical psychology distinguishes between two modes of attention: directed thinking and fantasy thinking. Directed thinking is logical, linear, and language-based. Fantasy thinking is associative, imagistic, and emotional. Both are necessary, but they serve different purposes. In today's digital landscape, attention capture mechanisms hijack fantasy thinking while masquerading as directed thinking. A social media feed may appear to present information, but it primarily engages emotional reactions, images, and impulses. This misalignment between appearance and reality leads to what Jung called dissociation, a splitting of awareness where the conscious mind believes it is engaged in rational activity while the unconscious is stimulated in chaotic, uncontrolled ways. Dissociation, according to Jung, is the psyche's attempt to protect itself from inner conflict. But when sustained over time, it grows into a psychological shadow, the accumulation of unacknowledged and unintegrated experience. The more fragmented attention becomes, the larger this shadow grows. It manifests in symptoms such as anxiety, depression, compulsions, and a chronic sense of disconnection. Crucially, this fragmentation also disables what Jung called the transcendent function, the psyche's capacity to hold opposites in tension and evolve through their synthesis. When attention is too scattered to sustain that tension, development stalls. Rigidity replaces creativity. Defense mechanisms replace growth. Jung's psychology offers more than diagnosis, it points toward healing. The central insight is deceptively simple: reclaim attention as an internal resource rather than an external commodity. Jung developed techniques for doing so, most notably active imagination, a method requiring sustained, deliberate attention directed toward inner imagery, emotions, and symbols. This practice reverses the fragmentation caused by distraction. It demands presence with what most people seek to avoid. For Jung, the ability to maintain inner dialogue was the foundation for perceiving reality accurately. Psychological maturity, he insisted, was not merely a matter of acquiring knowledge but of developing attentional sovereignty, the ability to direct focus according to one's own inner purpose. Without this, individuals remain vulnerable to manipulation and projection. With it, they gain not only clarity but freedom. This reclamation does not require total withdrawal from technology or society. It requires a shift in orientation. Jung advocated for several practical steps: maintaining a dream journal, engaging in non-judgmental creative expression, embracing periods of silence and solitude, and practicing active imagination. Each of these builds the muscle of attention, the capacity to sustain focus in a world designed to shatter it. Central to Jung's model is what he called the symbolic attitude, a way of relating to the world that looks beyond literal appearances to perceive the psychological realities beneath them. This attitude allows individuals to navigate life with depth and resilience. Patients who cultivated it, Jung noted, showed remarkable adaptability even under stress. They were less likely to collapse into despair or projection because they could engage with unconscious material productively. The development of this attitude requires what Jung called the container, a psychological space in which conflicting emotions, impulses, and ideas can coexist without immediate resolution. Creating this container depends on sustained attention. Only by holding contradictions in awareness without fleeing from them can the psyche generate the energy necessary for transformation. The greater the tension between opposites, Jung wrote, the greater the energy that comes from them. This energy, when properly contained, becomes the fuel for individuation, the process by which a person becomes psychologically whole. But it cannot be accessed through fragmented attention. Only the person who can sit with discomfort, ambiguity, and inner conflict can tap into it. Jung also emphasized the role of ritual not as mechanical repetition but as the conscious creation of attentional patterns that provide coherence amid chaos. Simple rituals of reflection, creativity, or meditation become anchors in the sea of digital noise. They mark out sacred time and space in which the psyche can restore itself. In all chaos, there is a cosmos, Jung observed. In all disorder, a secret order. These rituals create that order not by imposing rigid structure but by offering containers for experience. They are not escapes from life but ways of re-entering it more fully. Through them, the individual reclaims the flow of attention from the gravitational pull of distraction and reorients it toward inner integration. What emerges from Jung's work is nothing less than an attention revolution, a radical revaluation of the role attention plays in human life. This revolution does not reject modernity, it redefines our relationship with it. It begins with the recognition that attention is not just a faculty but the medium through which consciousness evolves. Man's task, Jung wrote, is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious. This task can only be accomplished through conscious, sustained attention. This revolution is deeply individual. The shoe that fits one person, Jung reminded us, pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Each person must discover their own path toward attentional sovereignty based on their psychological makeup and life context. But Jung is unequivocal: this path is not optional for those who seek growth. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, he wrote. The pain of reclaiming attention from addictive stimuli, from cultural conditioning, from fear, is the price of psychological freedom. The reward, however, is great. Reclaimed attention initiates the process of individuation, becoming whole. This wholeness manifests in reduced projection, emotional flexibility, creative insight, and the ability to navigate life with authenticity rather than compulsion. The stakes could not be higher. Jung saw the unconscious not as a personal storehouse of neuroses but as the source of renewal. When ignored, it becomes a source of dysfunction. When engaged, it becomes the wellspring of transformation. The choice Jung presents is stark but clear. Either attention becomes the means through which consciousness develops, or it becomes the mechanism through which it is captured, fragmented, and controlled. There is no neutral ground. Every moment of attention either serves growth or undermines it. Your vision will become clear, Jung wrote, only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. In an age engineered to pull us ever outward, the simple act of turning attention inward becomes not only a psychological practice but a revolutionary one. It is a reclamation of the most precious resource we possess and the medium through which we become fully human. Thank you for accompanying. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below so we can discuss. Wish you and your family good health.